I decided to take a walk to the park, and I wanted to sort of talk about, you know, I usually don't like going into specifics about things, like, oh, let's talk about the riots on the street right now, or I like to look big picture wise, because I think that so often we get lost in the details of stuff, and we start arguing about them, and it's this way, it's that way, and instead of doing that, I want to talk about just the general I want to talk about the general human condition. And this is a pretty heavy, long idea and concept, and I honestly don't know. I have these discussions all the time with people, and sometimes the words flow out in a way that I like the way that sounded, and having to redo them again, to redo your thoughts, sometimes they don't come out the same way. So I'm going to see what I can do, get my thoughts out, and see if I can just simply talk about the human condition without focusing on any specific thing going on right now. So one of the big questions is, why is the world the way it is, right? Why is the world the way it is? Is it because you can break that down in many different ways. Is it because of the governments we have? Is that the way the world? Is it because of our president? Is it because of the police? Is it because of society? Is it because why is the world the way it is? That might sound like an odd question because it sounds very broad, doesn't sound very specific, but when you look at the world and you wonder why it is, the world is always completely a reflection of the people of that time. And when you look at humankind and you look at what is the thing that cripples us the most and gives us a world where you might say that, hey, this is not a nice world, or hey, what's going on right now? I don't want this. This is not the world I want. This is not the world I signed up for. I don't want this. I don't agree with this. So then why is it that way then? Well, because no matter how you think or no matter how I think, is what I think and what you think is irrelevant. What always matters is what the general public thinks, the whole, the collective. So we could only be where we are in the world could only be where the collective is, right? So if you're on the outside of that thought pattern, then it's really hard to be like, well, if I just vote in the right president, if I just have the right political system, if we just have the right police, everything will be fine. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way, because the way the world is because of the way the collective is at that particular time. And the thing is when you look throughout history and you wonder, like, why is the world the way it is? Look back at the human condition and the thing that gets us the most. There's always this debate. Are people evil? Or is there good people and evil people? I don't believe in that. That's a whole other topic, but I don't believe in that. I believe in the idea that what emotion dictates what you do, right? And this is a very, I guess you can say this a very spiritual, philosophical, metaphysical type of idea, and it's been talked about many times before. It's nothing original, but it's just so plain and simple. It's almost like a little math equation, this idea that we have a lot of complex emotions, and you could dissect things in a million different ways. But when you really break down most of the stuff we do, it's like most of our actions come from either fear or love. And that sounds like just saying that just sounds like you want to roll your eyes, because what the hell does that mean, right? Like fear and love. It just sounds like, oh really? Like, can't you give me something a little bit more, I don't know, scientific or something more respected than just saying everything's about fear and love? But the idea is that look at the way the actions that people do, right? And if you want to dissect every action, if someone says, well, I hate that person, I hate this, I hate that, I hate that, where does that come from? The hate. I hate somebody who's different than me. I hate somebody who's this. So if you really break down most of them, they come from whether you're making the choice out of fear or out of love. And it sounds like such a simplistic way of looking at it, because it's like, come on, Tony, there's got to be more to it than that. You're telling me the human condition is just basically a theory of whether you're making choices out of fear and love? You can really break down the human condition to something that's simple, but yeah, you can. Just look at everybody around. Look at everybody that you know, and look at their actions and try to break that down and see where that comes from. And you might think that people make decisions because they're bad, but it's just this idea of fear. Fear is what controls us. That's why. And not only does fear control us, but it's also what makes us do actions that we call bad. That was a bad action. Like, a guy robs a liquor store, and you think, he's just a degenerate. But the idea is that if someone is trying to survive and they're scared about their livelihood and they're trying to do whatever they can to survive, that's just a natural action of what they're doing. It's not just that, that person is a bad person. It's they're doing whatever they can to survive. And that might come across as like they're a horrible person, right? Or another example, you see somebody in public in the middle of on the sidewalk, and you could say that this person is, I'm trying to say it without being too specific. You see something going on in the street, and you know it's wrong, and there's 20 people sitting around watching, and nobody does nothing. And you think that it's because they're bad people. Well, it just doesn't work that way. This idea that somebody's just bad and they're doing bad things. Or if people are circling around and they see something happening and they don't do anything, the idea is that, again, it's a decision made of fear, right? And it's not that they're bad people, it's just that fear dictates most of our life. Just the way it works, Wow, I hear a lot of birds outside. So fear dictates most of our lives, and it makes us do things that we think is bad. But it's not that we're bad. I'll give you another example. You clearly would understand this idea of making decisions by fear and love. So, you see somebody on the street, and then nobody's helping them. They're like, 20 people are circling around, no one's doing anything, or whether. But here's another example that sounds really innocent to make you understand how fear controls our life. Religion, the idea, a lot of people hate religion because they think, religion, it's caused a lot of trouble in the world. But the philosophy of religion, the idea and the intent of religion is just the simple idea of exploring spirituality and exploring bigger concepts, the world, the universe we live in, our reality. And then somewhere along the lines, you take this religion and this idea of trying to understand your place in the universe, and then you introduce stuff like, you like Jesus, huh? Oh yeah, you like this Jesus character? Yeah, he's a man of love, and he came down here to teach us about love and forgiveness and treat your neighbor nicely. But you also have to worship him, because if you don't worship him and admit that you're a sinner, you go to hell. Like, he's the one true Son of God, so you better start worshiping him. And people, out of fear, they're like, well, listen, I don't know, this sounds kind of sketchy, but I don't want to go to hell. Yeah, sure, I worship you. Yeah, you're the Son of God, sure. You meet people all the time. They're not bad people. They're not horrible people. It's just that you give in to fear because it's like, well, I don't want to take the chance. I'm not really that religious. I don't even know if this Jesus guy is real or anything, but I don't want to take the chance. You know what? I'm just gonna, yeah, I'm Christian. Yeah, no, yeah, I believe because it's kind of like, play it safe. It's kind of like, so this idea of like giving into fear. When you look at a person who's Christian and they like Jesus, you don't look at him and think, oh, I can't believe how fearful that person is, because the only reason that person is a Christian and likes Jesus is because they're scared to go to hell. Like nobody looks at a person like and they think they're horrible. That's just a person, right? But you make decisions based on fear, because logically, when you think about the idea that this loving entity, his name is Jesus, the idea that you would logically think that an entity of love and peace would want you to worship it or it sends you to hell is so insane and so nonsensical that just rationally that's complete nonsense. That's insane. That a being of love would be like, hey, you better worship me or I send you to hell. That is so insane. And yet, when the fear kicks in, you say, yeah, maybe I do worship Jesus. Yeah, okay, I'll do it. So it's not like people are bad. So just when someone sits around in a group, in public, you see someone doing something and 20 people are sitting around doing nothing. They're not horrible people. It's just that they're making a choice based on fear. So it's done in religion. It's done in just protecting ourselves. It's done in every aspect of life, all the way down to business. Now you think, what does business have to do with this? If you can break that down in any aspect of life, completely any aspect of life, so let's go down to business, right? So you think, okay, so the idea of business and money and commerce, this idea, so I'm going to start a business. I have this great idea to start a business, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to start a business and then I'm making millions of dollars and then I pay my employees minimum wage. And you think, well, who cares? I'm making jobs. I'm creating jobs. So you can be like, well, come on, man, I'm creating jobs and I'm the one who started it. I put in the risk. Why would I pay you the same that I get myself? But it's this idea of we need to make as much as we can. And people who make money, it's not that they're bad people. Everyone wants to make some money and be comfortable, buy things they like, buy a house, go on trips. It's not inherently evil to want to make money. But the problem is we live in this famine mentality, like I need more, more, more. So when you have a system like capitalism that in theory, like any system, should work fine, but we mess them up. Again, the human condition works the same way with politics, right? So it's this idea of fear. So when you're talking about a system like capitalism, you think this is great, it's freedom, open up a business and then make as much money as you can. And then that's when we run into the problem of how much is enough. But since we live in a famine mentality, you want more and more and more because it's never enough. Because the more you have, the more safe you feel, again, out of fear, right? Because you're building a bigger nest and a bigger house and it's more safety. Right? It's just simply more safety. You're not doing it because you're an evil person, because people always look at billionaires and they're like these evil, corrupt demons. They're just people who think there's never... You think that there's never enough, right? So you open up a business and you pay your employees minimum wage because you need to make more because it's your business. And again, you want to make more and more because if you look at things rationally, the idea of most businesses, it's a very strange idea. Because think about this. I think I want to open up a business. So you buy 30 vacuum cleaners. You saved up just enough to buy 30 vacuum cleaners. And then you hire some immigrant ladies and you pay them under the table cash, $2 an hour, $5 an hour to clean houses all day long. And you're making good money while these poor women are cleaning houses for barely any money. And you think, hey, I gave them jobs. I'm an entrepreneur. But do you know somewhere deep down that's... It's not fair. But hey, you're a business. You're not a bad person. You're not hurting them. You're like, hey, do you want to do this? Hey, you chose to do this job. I'm not forcing you, right? It's that idea of like, hey, no one's forcing you to work here. But it's this idea that it's some form of manipulation. You know it inherently inside of you, even though you're not a horrible person or bad. So the idea of, but again, this fearfulness of like, I need to make more and more and more. And it's very subtle, right? Because the idea of buying 30 vacuums and giving some people jobs and they barely make money cleaning houses all day, it's not... See, that's a very subtle example, and then it goes all the way to like the billionaires and the trillionaires and all these people who might have shadier businesses. Even but it all starts from a little thing of, oh, why I need more. How can I do this? And then you're like, so most businesses is the idea of using someone else to work for you. Right? That's most businesses, and the argument is always like, well, no one's forcing them. That's a very silly and sloppy argument. Like, no one's forcing you. It's just a very silly argument. You know what I mean? There's still manipulation involved, whether you're giving them jobs or not. It's the same thing with anything. You simply, anytime you're making money off of other people that you're paying, you can always just count it off as, well, I'm giving them an opportunity. No one's forcing them to work here. Even though you're making millions off of them and they're barely making any of it, you're just like, hey, I'm not forcing them to do it. So you can always just sort of pull that off. But you know, somewhere deep down inside, it's a manipulative way to make money, and it's not a fair way to make money. And that's what our system runs off. You know, it's like, I make money off of you. Because, you know, there's that cliche, but it's true, this idea that you're, you know, like, either you're making money off of somebody or someone is making money off of you. It's very rare that you run into fair business opportunities. You know, it's very unlikely that you're like, I'm going to open up this store and then we share everything together because we're friends and buddies. It's very rare that happens. Even though in an ideal world, that'd be the most practical way, but of course it doesn't work that way. So this thing of fear, the fact that we make our decisions, it's not that it could be the most subtle choice. It could be literally the most subtle choice. It doesn't have to be something like really dramatic, but it leads into other ones. So it starts more subtle, and then it goes into things like I said, like religion and politics and business, and it goes through every aspect of life. It just never stops. And so this idea of the world that we have, why do we have the world we have? Well, imagine a world where, so this idea that we live in a world where people are fearful. One of the side effects of that is also that you lack empathy for other people, right? Because it's kind of like, well, hey, I gotta be safe, you know, like I gotta look out for myself because I don't want to not have enough. So then you kind of like lose the capacity to have empathy for another person, because like I said, you start that really clever business idea, you buy the 30 vacuums, you're like, hey, I'm not a bad guy, I'm giving these women business opportunities. They clean all day for $4 an hour on their knees cleaning houses all day, and I'm making a lot more than them, but hey, I'm not a bad guy. So it's not like, you know, so this idea of like, you lose the empathy for other people when you're trying to make because, and it's not that you're this evil person, it's just that it's very natural if you live in that state to just kind of like lose the empathy. So this idea of when you live in the state of fear, the two things that give us this conflict with each other is the fact that we make our choices based on fear, and the fact that when we do that, we lose a lot of empathy, to the point where when that happens, and you hear a news story about, you know, somebody killed someone in the middle of the street, right? And then and somebody leaves a comment like, well, it's okay, they were a garbage person anyways, who cares? Right? That's just a person who's lost the ability to have empathy for another person, because we look at other people as different and we think, well, who cares about them? I'm doing okay in life, I'm respectable, and you're so it's the same analogy of like when you see the person, you know, robbing the liquor store, and you think, well, that person's degenerate, he deserves to have all the bad things happen to them. But that's just a person trying to do anything they can to survive. Again, right? It's not like that. So this idea that like we make choices out of fear, it's not that we're horrible, evil people. Everyone, the guy opening up the business, giving the 30 immigrant ladies $2 an hour to work, is just trying to survive. The guy robbing the liquor store is just trying to survive. And everyone's trying to survive any way they know how, any way they can, right? And it's so easy to look at another person and be like, well, I'm doing it the right way, you're doing it the wrong way, you're a degenerate. Again, but when you have no empathy, you lack the ability to understand the circumstances of someone's life and where they came from. What if this person came from nothing? They're terrified. Their mom has no food. They have a little baby at home, a little brother, and they're literally terrified out of their mind because they don't know, they haven't eaten in 3 days, and somebody gets desperate and they rob a liquor store just to make some money, so buy some food. You can't look at that because you've lost your ability to have any empathy, because we think we're all the same. We grew up in the same neighborhood. Some people grow up with nothing and they're desperate to survive, and you look at them as degenerates, but they're just human beings. Everyone is just a human being. All of us are the same. We're just human beings. And the reason we get in so much fights and angers and blame each other is this fear that we live in. And you can easily imagine a world where we make choices out of love instead of fear, and imagine the world we would see differently, right? Now it's the world has basically been the same since the beginning of time, this idea of like living in fear, because we're still very primal beings and our basic instincts are survival. I gotta survive, and and if anything threatens your survival state, you go into panic mode, fear. It's the same thing of like all the people who are anti-gun. Oh, guns are gross. The second a pandemic happens, everyone's like, oh, I need a gun. I want a gun. So all our choices that look like they're bad choices or evil choices or horrible, they're always fear-based. So this idea is, can we live in a world where most of our choices are love-based instead of fear-based? And that is the question, right? I think that humanity as a whole, I think that it is slowly evolving from a primal, primitive state to a more unity state. But that takes a lot of time. I mean, that takes a lot of time. You're talking about just think about the human race and how long we've been around, how long we've been evolving for. So this idea of going from this basic primal survival, fear, domination state to a unity state based more on love. It's not that everyone's going to be perfect and angelic. You're still going to hurt someone's feelings. You're still going to act like an idiot sometimes. You're still going to say it, but it's the idea that generally we act more out of love than out of fear, right? And that to me is really the simple breakdown of the human condition. It's this idea that we have the world we have because most of our choices are based on fear. And if someday we make most of our choices based on love, we will finally see a different world. And it's really as simple as that. And I'll leave it at that. So I hope you're all having a good day. And that's it. Bye.